With the first two Paddington films, it offered audiences a chance to see a family movie that's not tied to a mega franchise or as part of any superhero universe, but instead it's focusing on a character who's well mannered, has a heartwarming nature to him, and one who you're happy to support. And now, following those two films, we have the third in the series, titled Paddington in Peru, but can it match up to the quality of those first two movies?
Paddington 2 is incredible.
With this third installment, the story takes us away from London and takes us to Paddington's birthplace of Peru. And it's always a risk when you do that with some characters and films and TV where you're used to a certain setting, but then they go on holiday or something, and those episodes might not be as good as the ones you're used to back in their home. And in terms of Paddington, it's definitely lost something in this third film because he is so heavily linked with London. Everything about it, the way he is, the way he's civil with people, is something which, as someone who's from the UK, it's something we always hold dear as one of our values, to be polite and to treat people with respect in that way, even though that doesn't always happen. But I think with this film, it just struggles to really find the substitution there, because Peru isn't really a country, isn't really a character in the film. Like with London, it is a character in those first two films. Like we've seen in other films, like with the Batman movies, Gotham is a character in itself. In the movie Seven, that city is a character, the moodiness of it. And in terms of this film, Peru just feels it is just a jungle, right? And so it's like jungle versus city. But with London, it's not a city, is it? It has a lot more to it. But this is just a jungle. So that's one big negative straight away. And the film then has to try and do something else, to be more clever, to try and, make up for that loss. And unfortunately, the story doesn't have enough of that going for it.
Please, sir, I want some more.
More?
All right, stop it. Stop it right there. Now go on, fill up the bowl.
Also, something to note about the sequel, we do have a new Mrs. Brown, because Sally Hawkins there on the right has left the role and Emily Mortimer has taken over. Sally Hawkins said she just left because she thought it was the right time. I think she just was happy with those first two films and wanted to hand the reins over to someone else. We do have some big stars joining Paddington in Peru, one being Olivia Colman, another Antonio Banderas. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be part of this film, but she had to drop out because of the SAG strikes, so Carla Toos took over her role. So what's the plot this time round? Well, Paddington gets a letter from Peru saying there's something wrong with Aunt Lucy, so him and the Browns go to Peru to find out what's up. But when they get there, they find out that Aunt Lucy has gone missing, and so Paddington and the Browns go through the Amazon rainforest to try and find her. So with this film, we have the two plot lines, one being Paddington and the Brown family looking for Aunt Lucy, as they run into people like Antonio Banderas' character along the way. And then we have Mrs. Bird sticking back at the home for retired bears, as she's hanging around with the nun played by Olivia Colman. And things are acting a bit weird at this place, so you're trying to work out what's going on there, but also, do we trust Antonio Banderas' character when we're with Paddington? And Paddington, as he always is charming, and every time we're with him specifically, that's when the film is the best. And sometimes he's on his own, sometimes he's away from the Brown family for a bit, and it's just lovely being with him. With the Brown family in this film, they don't always have a lot to do. Like I said, Mrs. Bird has that thing with the nun, but the rest of the family, they have their one little perk which will make them relevant later in the story, but that's about it. Like Mr. Brown has a spider thing which comes into play a few times, but when you compare it to like Paddington 2, Paddington was in prison, and that meant that they could try and solve the mystery while he was in there, so they had lots more to really get their teeth into. And so a lot of the runtime is given to the film's antagonist, Antonio Banderas, as well as his daughter, as we learn about their backstory, as he's dealing with these family ghosts haunting him and trying to persuade him to do certain things. And compared to the other two, like Nicole Kidman in the first film and Hugh Grant in the second, he is the weakest villain of the lot. And it's just because some of those jokes around these ghosts didn't really work. His story is quite a cliche sort of story we've seen with these sort of adventure movies, especially ones which are set in this sort of jungle setting. There's even references in this film to Indiana Jones, and there's a rope bridge and all these sort of things which are nice homages really, but at the same time you know, they can also be like, you know, where's the new stuff here? And so a lot of the new stuff we have to rely on with the other storyline with Olivia Colman's story. In regards to Olivia Colman's character here, she plays it a lot like she has played other characters in the past. And so I think if you like that approach she's done before, then you'll probably like this character. The thing is, with this part of the story, it never really grabbed me because you just got Mrs. Bird poking around the place, and then she's quite blunt with how, you know, telling her what's going on. There's no real mystery about it. She kind of wants things to be unraveled, and so that's not really that enjoyable to watch, and it doesn't really work as a comedy angle either. It goes without saying already, but Ben Whishaw provides Paddington's voice in an expert way once again. It's so calming and so, you know, fitting for this character. I think this is the worst Paddington film, and it is the least favourite of mine, definitely. But I feel bad even saying those sort of words, like those negative terms. It is instead the third best Paddington film. And even though it is, you know, it's not up to standard as those first two, I think if you still want that escape with Paddington, it will provide a delightful enough one for you. Also, if you do watch the film, make sure to stick around for the 2 end credit scenes. I think one of them gave me the biggest laugh of the whole film, so they are really worth sticking around for. And speaking of laughs, there's a great one at the start of the film where we see Paddington try and get his photo taken for his passport, and I don't know if you've seen this, but Paddington's actually been given an official UK passport by the Home Office. So if you have been waiting in the queue, sorry, the bear's been ahead of you, and it's actually got bear listed in the passport as well. So that's quite incredible. Also, something else you may not know, if you type in Paddington 3 on Google, you can click this icon down here and you'll get as many marmalade sandwiches as you want. Even with the film's shortcomings, Paddington in Peru still nabbed a decent record here of being the biggest UK opening for a British film since No Time to Die. It's the 3rd highest opening in the UK this year, behind Deadpool & Wolverine and Inside Out 2. And it's earned around $12 million in that opening weekend. And of course, it will now release in other regions. In America, I believe it's going to release in mid-January, so quite a long time to wait. One reason as well for the shortcomings could potentially be that Paul King, who directed the first 2 films, left the film to go and work on Wonka, but he still did work on the story alongside the other creatives from those first 2 films. But yeah, him not being in the director's seat could potentially be a reason. He may now return to the director's seat for the 4th film, which looks to be releasing around 2028 for the film's, well, for Paddington's 70th anniversary. And I assume when it comes to that 4th film, we will go back to the UK for its 70th anniversary, because as well, Peru didn't really, do enough to make it worthwhile going back there again. They didn't really expand on this country to make it a setting where, you gain more when you lose, because you lose a lot going away from London. You have all those characters who were built up in the first 2 films, those side characters. You can't use them in this film. And even the ones who are in the film, like I mentioned, they don't have enough to do. So I assume we will go back to London. And maybe he'll have some tea with the king after what he did with the queen.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
Also, just a little personal note from me on Paddington. I actually had a whole Paddington day because I never watched those first 2 films before. So I watched them back to back on Netflix. Then in the evening went to watch Paddington in Peru at the cinema. And it was a splendid Paddington day. It was great. Having all that time with the bear, and I'm happy I'm finally caught up, because considering I used to love him as a kid, I don't know why they passed me by when they came out at the cinema originally. So anyway, I'm up to date now, so that's all good. But what were your thoughts on Paddington in Peru? Let me know down in the comments below. I know for many regions it's not out yet, so if it's not out where you are, what are you hoping to see from the film? And overall, which Paddington movie is your favourite so far? I think for me, it's definitely Paddington 2. But yeah, let me know all that down below. And if you want to watch another video, on screen we have a couple of my recent reviews.